Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 7 of Fuller Files, the official podcast of the Syracuse Pulse. I'm Rocco DiMaio, the host of Fuller Files and the broadcaster for the team. As you know, throughout the season, I'll be sitting down with Syracuse head coach Peter Fuller, as well as some members of the roster to keep you up to date with everything you need to know about the team. And joining me once more is the man of the hour, Coach Peter Fuller. And Coach, it's great to see you, and you just look so thrilled. I mean, it's you have every reason to be. I mean, everything is just going well right now.
Yeah, we're in a good run of form, and guys are playing well. You go through. It's funny. Colin, my assistant, and I were talking the other day, and in a 10-month season, you're going to go through highs and lows, and God knows we've gone through enough lows. So the highs, you really enjoy these times. I'm ever so pleased with the guys. Organization's doing well. It's a great way to go into a long road trip.
For sure. Now, I mean, let's get straight into it. I mean, now you're on a 3-game winning streak in NISA regular season play.
Yes.
Let's talk about the third most recent win, a big win against Maryland Bobcats, who sit just above you in the NISA standings.
Yes, obviously 2-1, really good result. Late winner from Minjae Kwok. Terrific goal, good move up the pitch that set it up. Maryland's a good team. I think they're very skillful, really athletic, and they have some guys that can take a game over by themselves if they so choose. The Darwin Espinals, Elijah Amo. I mean, they're a quality team, and so I think it's a tremendous feather in our cap to have won it, and to be fair, in the way we won it, I think 2-1, maybe even flattered them a little bit. I thought we were the better team. Certainly had the better chances consistently throughout the match. Had a tough officiating decision go against us, which well could have led to a third. So all in all, very pleased. And more than anything else, Rocco, I think just keeping things ticking over. We were off for a long stretch. Now, obviously, we played the exhibition against Flower City on the Wednesday prior to the game on Sunday. But I think it was a long stretch to be off, and I'm just so pleased that we just picked right up where we left off. It was a really good performance. Excellent goal by Juan, set up by some excellent passing. Great little touch by Bruno Rendon to let it run through onto Juan, and obviously he buried it. So, disappointed with the goal that we conceded. It's off of our own free kick. But there's some real teachable moments in there too, in terms of, the bottom line is the keeper gets it in that situation, and you've committed a lot of your big bodies forward, defenders forward. Guys have got to get back, and we weren't quick enough to get back. Didn't deal with it well enough. And to be fair, the boy Balogun finished it beautifully. So credit to them, but I think there's some things we could have done earlier on in that entire sequence to have alleviated it.
And let's talk about what went into each of the 2 goals. I mean, you mentioned the first goal with Juan and how it took a little touch off of Bruno.
Yes, it did, and
Bruno. Yeah, I was gonna say, just talk about Bruno's development. I mean, it seems as though every time we hop on, there's something new to say about Bruno.
There is. I mean, the thing is, remember that he came to us as a right back. he played right back in the Flower City exhibition. We only played him for 20 minutes and scores 2 goals and should have had a third from right back. He's a terrific player, and has just, you see it every single day in training. There's something new, something that you look at and you're just like, wow, I haven't seen him do that before, and basically he's played as a 9 for probably the previous 3 or 4 games, other than the exhibition leading into Sunday's contest with Maryland. And because of KJ being out with the yellow card suspension, we moved him out wide and ended up early on in that game moving him out to the 9, or excuse me, out to the 11. And he's never played there before, and he picked it up, seamlessly, and made a great run on the goal. Little flick onto Juan to finish it. He just gets better every day, Rocco. And the other thing I don't think he gets enough credit for, talking about a guy who, he's a Cuban exile. He's been in the country basically 2 years, 3 years. He's still learning English. He's still learning how to express himself in English. And this is a tough environment. You've got 2 other guys in the team that speak Spanish fluently. So it's not like everybody can converse with him in his own language. And he's getting better and better with his English. And he's just he shows up every day to training with a big smile on his face. Fit in great with the guys. The guys love him, and you just see something every single day where you're like, man, that's incredible. He's a freak athlete, Rocco. That's the thing with him. He is a freak athlete, and it's not just his pace. In the air, he's phenomenal. Particularly in both boxes, he's really, really good. You'll see guys that are good in the air in the middle third, big, goal kicks, keeper punts, those kinds of things. But there are other guys that are not just good there, but good in the boxes where it really matters. And he's terrific there. Brave, will compete for anything. And he's learning how to be a really good soccer player. He listens, he pays attention, and it's hard because you got 2 coaches right now that speak to him, exclusively in English. So he's having to get a little bit of help from Alex and from Christian. But boy, he's a terrific player and a really, really good kid. A pleasure to coach.
And why don't we talk about, going into that second goal and how Bruno had a role in that as well. I mean, if you look at that replay again, he was on the near side flank, just entering the attacking third, and he did get a couple steps in there. And he was getting approached by 1, maybe 2 defenders, and he finds Minjae Kwak all the way at the top of the 18, probably like right by the curve, and just talk that play alone. So really, he didn't have a role on 1 but 2 goals on Sunday's game.
No question, but I think you go back even further. He absolutely skinned 2 guys along the end line, and it ended up it beaten the keeper. It ended up a guy had cleared it off the line. If he just raised it up off the ground a little bit, it would have been another goal for us. He was causing them. I mean, he was tormenting their right side, particularly in that second half. And the ball he played to Minjae, you're right. It's a great ball. And Minjae took it really, really well in terms of his first touch, got him on the move, away from the defender. Obviously, a couple of little Minjae step overs, and opened himself up, and a good quality finish. And obviously the placement was perfect. So, yeah, he quietly, Bruno was a real factor on Sunday night.
Yeah, for sure. And what's now, before we turn this into the Bruno Rendon show, which, hey, I'm sure you would love,
Yeah,
but what, you know, we talk about how this team is, there were a lot of downs early on in the season. Like you go back to like May and June and even early July and we even my broadcast partners, we were talking about this leaving Syracuse that night, leaving the stadium, leaving Laser that night. Me, Jaden, I mean, it was kind of hard for Dylan, the other guy that was on the call with me. This team has really come a long way because even from Jaden's point of view, because Jaden, he started with us sometime, I believe it was in July. And it was, I think, I no yeah, it was his first game was that 4-0 win over Flower City.
yes.
And so we're talking, and we just reflect back amongst ourselves about how this team has come a long way, even from, like I said, James' point of view, who wasn't even here for as early as I was with the organization, working here and seeing every game, at least every home game. What's been the secret ingredient to getting to the point of where you are now, from the way things have started, constant loss after loss after loss, to now a 3-game win streak. You won the NISA Independent Cup, your region, and all. Just what's been the secret ingredient for you guys?
Well, I think there's 2 or 3 things. The first one, when you were asking the question, and I kind of got an idea of where you were going with it, was consistency. And what I mean by that is we're not really training in terms of the things we're doing, the things that we're emphasizing. We're not doing anything that much different than we were doing probably in May. I think, Colin, Nick, and myself, we sat down, and one of the things we realized after the first month that we were together, we've got some guys that are really good in possession. We can keep the ball. We can play through people if we have to. We can play around them and we can play over them. But I wouldn't have expected early on that we would be as good in possession as what we've ended up being. So from that moment on, which probably came sometime in May, we've been pretty much doing the same things in training. If you came out in May and you came now, I think you'd see the same emphasis. We just weren't very good at it early on, but we believed that we were doing the right things, that it was going the right way, and eventually the guys were not only going to get it, but they would thrive, not just survive, but that we would thrive. So I think consistency in terms of the message, in terms of what we did each day in training, in terms of our expectations. Even though we were losing games, we kept our expectations high. We had a little come to Jesus meeting after the San Diego game where I went through some things in the locker room right after in a closed door meeting with the players. And my emphasis wasn't really on anything to do with soccer. It was mainly on 4 particular things that I wanted us to do to be more professional. And I only bring that up to say, being a professional player isn't just about the 2 hours of the day that you're on the field. It's a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week job for 10 months in our league. And I felt we were letting ourselves down in some of those important areas in the other 22 hours of the day. So we got that out of the way. And I think since then we've had a real different mindset and approach in terms of how we prepare, in terms of away from the field, those kinds of things. But consistency for sure in terms of those areas has clearly been evident from when we decided we needed to become more possession based than what we were. And again, I'm not saying we're Chattanooga FC. That's don't take this wrong from the standpoint of they're on a different planet than probably all of us in terms of how they keep the ball and their possession statistics, those kinds of things. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, if a team forces us to play through them, we have the ability now, and not just the ability, but the mentality and the tactical expertise to know what we have to do to play through them. And that's a huge piece. It makes us really difficult to defend. So consistency. The other thing that I would say is belief on the players' part. You got to give them credit. It'd be easy. We get tanked at home, 3-0. We lose to Valley United 2-0 after they had just lost all of their best players. Lose on just a foolish goal that we gave up against LA at home to end up losing 2-1. We went through a stretch there in June. We were awful, and it would have been easy for the players to sit there and say, "This isn't working." I'm not buying this, and the guys did, and they showed up every day. They worked their backside off, and Colin and I were saying, and obviously Colin's coached at been an assistant at Sacramento for 2 years. Interim head coach in League One, terrific player. But he said one day, he said, "I'll tell you what, if this were most of the places that I've been, and we were struggling as much as we are with results, the players had just said, no, we're not buying this." And his point was, every single day these guys come in with a smile on their face and they work their backside off. And it's the truth. You got to give them a lot of credit for sticking with this, Rocco. And I think the last thing is just some consistency in terms of the organization with our owner, Jim Smith, with all of our support staff. It was hard early on because there was no consistency in terms of a lot of the off the field stuff, and we've gotten that right. And I think you got to give ownership and the others, Penny Phillips Powers, right down to Isabel Clark, our trainer. I mean, there's so many people. Anthony Epifani. There's a lot of people that have really made this just more and more professional here. So I think you've got to give them a lot of credit as well. But I think those are the three main reasons I would say why we're having the success we're having. The other thing is too, honestly, I said it earlier on in this interview. You're going to go through bad patches, Rocco. Ours just happened to be at the beginning of the year, but everybody's going to go through a bad patch. Chattanooga did. I think Cal United's going through a little bit of it now. They're still managing to eke out a point here, a point there. But I don't think they're hitting on the same kind of cylinders as they were early on. In a 10-month season, you're going to go through some bad patches. And as a staff, how you handle that, as players, how they handle it, will kind of dictate how long it takes to get through that. So.
And it seems as though that consistency will be the theme going forward for sure, because as hard as it was to get on this path of consistency and start winning more and getting on a better path, is going to be just as easy to lose that just from one loss, because of course I can only imagine the kind of momentum that's kind of going around in the locker room right now.
Sure.
Considering how good things have been going and all that sort of stuff. Now, you kind of put it right there for me, how consistency was kind of getting it, and how I was about to ask if the players ever thought they were down and out, but you kind of highlighted that for me.
Yeah, and I again, I can't put myself in their minds, but all I can go on is what I saw and see every day. The guys come in and train the same way right now that they were back in May. I mean, these guys work hard. It was interesting. you know, a couple of our players were talking about other places that they had been, and I was saying to them, you know, what do you find different here than there? And they said, how hard we train. And he said, how intense it is. He said, they were like, I couldn't believe the challenges flying in and training and everything else. And so it actually took us a little bit to get used to it, you know, and I'm glad to hear that, because I do think you can't do it all the time, but training in terms of the intensity of it should replicate the game, and at least at certain portions of training and on certain days. And I think that's been a huge help. But that was the same in May as it is now. I mean, that was no different. But you're getting some really good individual performances now. I told the guys the other day, I said, you know, you guys are making it really difficult for me, because I mean, I've got, you know, 15 or 16 guys, you know, now that are all going really well, and who gets in the first 11 and who's on the sub bench today. And that's really good, because they push each other. And they're hard on themselves and each other. There's I think people would be surprised how much these guys, you know, little possession game or whatever, how angry they get when they lose, and how much they get into each other about, you need to perform better, how angry they get with themselves. And it's a team with a good mentality in terms of that. So it's great.
Just last month, just a couple of days ago, I should say, you were named NISA Coach of the Month. And in a post-game interview down at the field with Jaden Becker this past Sunday, you know, you really, just like you did all night tonight, you really dedicated your award, your accolade to the players on the field. You know, it just seems as though like you're essentially giving all the credit, because you know, it's from what you said, I remember you saying, you know, if it wasn't for the product that they put out on the field, I wouldn't have gotten this award. So talk a little bit about, you know, your award, and how just how much they really deserve that acknowledgement, and you know what, you know, how you kind of just bring that along with them.
Well, it's interesting. I had no idea that I'd won it. Anthony Epifani, actually, one of our ops people, had texted me, congratulations. And I said, congratulations for what? I had no idea. So again, those kind of things, honestly, Rocco, for me, it's not really it's not a big deal. I think when you get to my age and you have been through what I've been through, especially even in the last year, you know, getting fired, you know, so you realize that all of those kinds of things are fleeting. I mean, you know, I was fired a year ago, 2 years ago. We won the Eastern Division of NISA and ended up losing Whisker Hair from beating Oakland in the league semifinal. So you realize all of those kinds of things are fleeting, but it is the truth. It's about the players. The players, and I would say our staff. We have a really good staff, and they work hard. They work hard at their craft, and you know, it's a group that we fit together really, really well. But the truth of it is, if our players had lost every game in August, I wouldn't have won the award. And I had felt that that it was getting better, that it was improving, that we were at a point where we were turning the corner. And then they did. You know, but it really is, it's an award that I think, you know, it's an acknowledgement that you're doing a good job, and that's important to me. I love my job, and I love my work. I'm the luckiest guy in the world to do what I do. I make my living at a kids game, and I think that's a privilege, not a right. But I also think it's an acknowledgement that you're doing a good job. But more importantly, this is a player's game. It's not like American football or basketball. Things go wrong for 2 minutes and you call timeout and you get it corrected and everything else. If you haven't done your job during the week, it's going to show on Saturday or Sunday or Wednesday. You got to do our work has to be done away from the field, because we all we have in that 45-minute halves, we've got the best seat in the house. We can affect things with a change or two with players and those kinds of things. I'm not minimizing what we do. I am saying, though, at the end of the day, your work has to be done during the week, and you have to have gotten through to the players, and they have to carry out the message. And our guys are doing it. And the most important commodity, Rocco, in what we do is the players. They're the most important commodity. And I always say this, I've probably said it in one of your broadcasts in one of these interviews at another time. And if I have, forgive me for repeating it, but I think it applies here again. The first team of a professional football club, soccer club, the first team is really, it's like the front porch to a house. It's not necessarily the most important room in the house, but it is the most visible. And what we do in terms of, we're the most visible portion of Syracuse Pulse. And it's very important to me that we look professional, that we put out a professional performance, and our guys are doing that right now. So a long answer. I got way long-winded with it, but the truth of it is I've got a great staff, and I've got good players who are winning games, and that's always going to make you look good if you're the coach.
And speaking of players, I'm about to move over to our player spotlight, where tonight we're going to be talking to Zach Reynolds, who,
oh wow, Zachary, the Orlando kid.
The Orlando kid, yep. And the Orlando kid, the one who was listed at midfield and not necessarily logging a whole lot of minutes to begin the season, is now a staple in the back line for you at center back during this absence of Kyle Newell, who is still recovering from his injury. Just like we talked about a couple episodes ago, where you move Zach back to that center back role along with Morian Musi, and you move Kyle Da Silva to where Kyle Newell was playing.
Mm-hmm.
You probably mentioned a whole lot of things about Zach before, but just talk about how he's developed from, what are some differences that you see from the start of the season to now?
Mm-hmm.
That has obviously, of course, earned him that spot on the starting 11.
Sure. Rocco, I'm going to give you a little bit of background. 2012, I was out of work at the time. I had just left New England Revolution, and Bill Elliott, the head coach at University of West Florida in Pensacola, had asked me while I was out of work. It was before in between my New England stint and my Philadelphia Union stint. And he asked me if I would be interested. I was living in Mobile, in my home that I still own there. And Pensacola is about 70 miles away. He asked if I would come over and be the assistant for him for that season until I got something else. And I was happy to do it. Bill's a very close friend of mine, and a terrific coach, somebody I respect a boatload. And so I was working with him, and there was a young man who came in from Orlando named Zachary Reynolds, who was a freshman that year, and wonderful kid, good player. You can see definitely see he had some potential, but so that was my first interaction with Zach. And it's interesting now, I mean, it's kind of come full circle. Obviously, when I was at Chat in 2002, the beginning of NISA, he was at Michigan Stars, playing in the midfield for them. Was there for 2 years and then became a free agent. I was putting this together and trying to do it in short order. And I think it was Kyle talked to me about Zach, and also Bill Elliott said, he's available. He's been in with Chattanooga. They're not going to sign him. Would you be interested? I was like, absolutely. Because Zach, when we brought him in, was a squad guy, an older player who was a great guy who was going to understand his role, do his job, whatever that entailed. And not be a guy that was going to, if he wasn't playing much or whatever, really rock the boat. And to be fair, through April, he played against Maryland Bobcats there. Didn't have a great game. And really didn't get another kick of it until the Chattanooga game down in Chattanooga, the second time we went there on the 2nd of July. And here's the thing. And this is where, as coaches, I think we have to be serious every day when we go into training, watching how guys are doing. Zach had about 2 or 3 really good weeks, and I just hadn't played him. I would say probably that he hadn't earned my trust yet, but he kept doing well in training, and we were like, you know what, with what we're going to have to do against Chattanooga, he makes sense. He hopped in midfield, was fantastic. And he's been playing ever since, but it was the Independent Cup game over at Utica University, where we moved him back there in the second half, in beside Morion, and it fit like a glove. Morion's a young kid who's got the potential to be a very good player, but he needs an older arm around him, and Zach was perfect. He's incredibly intelligent as a player. You only have to tell him something once. He understands the players believe in him and trust him, which is huge. When he tells Michael Kafari to go do something, Mike does it because Mike trusts him. And that says something. When he tells Sean Russell to do something, or Caio da Silva, they trust him. He's really smart. He has his limits athletically, but not as much as I think sometimes people believe. He's terrific in the air. His timing's really, really good. His timing when he goes to ground is excellent. He had to do it 2 or 3 times in the Maryland game, and I thought did a terrific job with it. We look at him and think that maybe his pace is somebody's going to catch him out or whatever. They never do, because he's smart enough not to get in foot races. So he's been a big piece to where we've now taken off and put ourselves right in the mix in terms of the playoffs. He's done a hell of a job. So really, really pleased and proud of him. And you couldn't ask for a better guy. I mean, he's played in Sweden. He's bounced around over here. I mean, he's a soccer junkie, loves the game. If there's a game being played, he's going to hop in and play it. He's a terrific passer of the ball. His range is really good. Reads the game well, and just really, really intelligent. He fits like a glove in what we're trying to do. In terms of us being able to play out of the back, he's made a big difference for us.
Well, I can't wait to hear more about him and his story and how he made his way to Syracuse later on. But I am going to let you go. Coach, as always, it's been great. And good luck throughout this next upcoming West Coast trip. It's going to be nice and sunny over there for sure, probably. Sure you're going to love that. But until then, I'll see you next time, and continue the great work.
Rocco, thank you, and thanks for all you do for the club, and certainly Phil, who I know has gone back to Syracuse. Jaden does such a good job on the touchline. You've made the broadcast really professional, and I think when you look around the league, I really believe ours is one of the more professional of any in NISA. So So kudos to you, and thank you for always making me feel welcome, and for looking after our players as well too. So thank you.
Of course, it's our pleasure. All right, Coach. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Take care, Rocco. Thank you.
Yep. Welcome back to Fuller Files, where we just finished and sat down talking to head coach of the Syracuse Pulse, Coach Peter Fuller. And now for our player spotlight, we're here to bring on number 5, Zachary Reynolds. Zachary, thank you so much for your time today. And how you doing?
Of course, Rocco. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Now let's start off with the basics. Why don't you just tell me how you made your way to Syracuse? Just your road, basically your whole road of soccer up until this point where you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm from Florida originally, born and raised, grew up in Central Florida. I went to high school there, went on to play college soccer at the University of West Florida up in the Panhandle. Did all 4 years there. After graduating, had the opportunity to go overseas and played abroad over in Sweden for a little bit. And then unfortunately was forced back with visa issues, not being able to stay over there. Came back, was stateside, played for another team in NISA before coming here, Michigan. Michigan Stars, was there for 2 years, and then left Michigan after last year and made my way to Syracuse to play for the Pulse.
And you talk about how you and even Coach Fuller mentioned this to me, how you went over to Sweden and play. In your time there, I know it was cut short, but in your time there, what are some things, some differences between how the soccer over there in Sweden versus how it was over here in America?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing my takeaway was from being over there is it's a culture. Football is everything over there, not just in Sweden, but I think in a lot of Europe and a lot of the rest of the world. It's a culture. It's different. They take it, not that we don't take it serious here, but they live and breathe football in many other countries. And so it was cool just to experience the different culture that you get from being abroad, not just with the football, but with the people in the cities that you're living in. It was an awesome experience.
And Coach Fuller mentioned how he was brought on to bring on a coach, to be a part of a coaching staff in which you were a player for back in the day, back in, I believe it was your college days. He mentioned,
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that, and how things have changed, if they've changed, between your time as having him as a coach then and having him as a coach now.
Absolutely. So we actually, Coach Fuller and I have known each other for, I think, going on 10 years now. He was one of my assistant coaches my freshman year of college. Him and my head coach have a very close relationship. And so he came on, it was my assistant my freshman year. Didn't get to know him as well as I have now. Obviously, I think that's been the biggest difference is as an assistant my freshman year. The relationship wasn't, necessarily as tight and strong as it is now. And coming to play for him here now, it's obviously built a much better relationship in moving forward.
And you mentioned how you are from Florida, and I was there about about 6, 7, 8 months ago, back in March of this past year. I must say I was in Miami, and
yes,
quite some. It was
weather's quite different.
Weather's nice, especially in March, because I'm up here up in the Northeast, and I just go down there, and it's I have to say, like, I hate to kind of draw ourselves off topic a little bit, but I just had to point that out there, man. The weather is
much more enjoyable weather come winter time.
Yes, for sure. Now, why don't we just talk about just how you made your way to Syracuse specifically? Talk about signing day. Just how everything came about when you heard about the movement, you heard about the new team coming to Syracuse in NISA, so the same league that you were in when you were playing for Michigan and all that. Yep.
So I had already left Michigan, and obviously in the off season, I was still, I think, like many of us, looking for a new team for the upcoming season. And when I found out that Coach Fuller was taking the head coaching position, reached out right away, showed that I was interested. It was obviously a late start for all of us, for the club, for the staff, for the team. Everything was very helter-skelter, last minute. Everybody kind of knows how things started off for us. But reached out to him, showed the interest, and obviously was super excited when he was interested in having me and being able to make my way to Syracuse.
And now that you're in Syracuse, you've been in Syracuse for ever since the start of the season, back in April, maybe even late March, rather. Talk about how you've been able to settle in. How's it different from, I mean, obviously, aside from the weather that you're so used to down there in Florida,
Yeah.
how different is it, and how were you able to adjust and adapt, and especially with, your new teammates, and how you've been getting along with them?
Yeah, it was definitely a learning experience. We obviously got in late. Fortunately, I think we've got a good group of guys, and a lot of guys knew other guys from around the league coming into it. So the names were familiar, the faces were familiar, and then it was just up to us gelling and having the time to spend together to get to know each other on and off the field, that we didn't necessarily get to have as far as a proper preseason, but just getting in and getting to know everybody, getting on the same page, and just kind of trying to grind this thing out.
And you talk about how, like, because of the shortened preseason, you weren't able to really mix and mingle with your new teammates, and you kind of had to do that as the season came along. How were you able? How were you even able to do that? In what ways were you and your new teammates trying to find new ways to kind of just get to know each other
Yeah.
and kind of just build chemistry as the season is going along?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, a lot of it was just spending time with each other. It's amazing how much you get to know somebody just by spending time, whether it's, going to see movies, hanging out at each other's apartments, playing games, anything you can do off the field to help on the field stuff is always beneficial.
And one of the biggest storylines with you specifically has been your switch of roles.
Yeah.
Earlier in the season, we didn't really see much of you out there, but now as later things went on, and you were forced to be brought back as a center back and let Kyle Da Silva go on that right back where Kyle Newell usually is. Unfortunately, as you know, he's out with an injury right now.
Yeah.
How are you able to adjust to that kind of role, especially considering on paper you're listed as a midfielder?
Yeah, I think just having the mindset of doing whatever it is necessary to benefit the team. Fortunately for me, in my college days and abroad, this isn't the first time I've been not forced but had to play center back. So it wasn't completely new to me. It's something I've done in the past, so I was okay with it. And obviously, Coach Fuller and I had a conversation before the switch took place, and we talked it out, and obviously he was comfortable and I was comfortable with it. So fortunately, it's just been something that's benefited the team as a whole overall.
And another storyline with the team thus far is 3 straight regular season wins,
Yes.
something that I up in the booth was not able to say back in July, June, and May. Talk about this current run that you guys have going on right now. I mean, obviously I don't want to be the one to hopefully not jinx it, but what do you think has been the secret ingredient? I mean, I've heard coaches
Yeah.
thing on it, but what about you? What are you seeing from your point of view?
I mean, guys have just been bought in. It's been now, I think, few weeks, few months that we've been consistently showing up and putting in the work. And I know we had a rough start, but Coach Fuller has said it. I think a lot of guys in the locker room would say it, is we've just continued to show up, put the work in, and grind through those rough days. And fortunately, now we're seeing a good stretch of games and weeks where we've been playing very well. And I think the guys they're focused on that, showing up, continuing to put in the work, and doing what's gotten us to this point so far.
All right. And I gotta ask, what's going on with, I know how Minjae Kwok and Juan Louis have a bromance of their own. Do you have a bromance of your own on the roster? I mean, is there that one specific person, or with you kind of just like, yeah, everyone?
I don't think there is. I like to think I gel well with everybody. I don't think I can say I'm quite like Juan and Minjae, unfortunately.
It's such a big thing with them.
It is. It is.
Minjae and Juan Louis, just the bromance. I mean, we even talk about it up in the booth, myself, and whether it was Philip or this past Sunday, Dylan. Just we're always talking about the bromance, and now it's kind of one of those things. It's like, all right, who else has a bromance going on?
Well, they're definitely the one and only, the one and only.
The one and only. All right. Hey, Zach, thank you so much for your time today.
Of course,
Good
Rocco.
luck throughout the rest of the way. It's been a pleasure watching you up in the booth, up at Leisure Stadium, and I wish you luck throughout the rest of the season.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Thank you. And that's all for this episode, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in to this presentation of Fuller Files. Join us next time and be sure to tune into 11sports.com to catch all of the Syracuse Pulse action. Follow the team on all social platforms at Syracuse Pulse, and we'll see you next time on Fuller Files.